Despite Cale's encouragement, Celaena is unable to stand and fight Cain, as she is plagued by unseen demons from the in-between. Fearing death, she calls on Elena to help her beat off the horde long enough for Celaena to rise and fight back, ultimately defeating Cain. Celaena's grave injuries distract her and a helpless Dorian such that they do not see Cain's approach to finish her off, but Cale intercedes and ultimately kills the brute. Celaena is named the king's champion, and Caltaine, seething at her failure to incapacitate the assassin, is imprisoned for poisoning the champion. For a week, Celaena is attended to by Dorian, Nehemia, and Philippa as she recovers, during which the king and Parrington scheme, and Dorian stands up to his father to protect Celaena and Cale. Despite their bond, Celaena ends her romantic relationship with Dorian, while Cale, ashamed and dejected for murdering Cain, cannot accept comfort from his friends. He only finds hope for the future when he sees Celaena and her own happiness at the prospect of her freedom.
Hi there, we're BookTok for BookTok with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
I'm Jac.
And I'm Amy.
We embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, romantasy books written by women. And so it is in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to reasons you may love or hate today's popular books.
This week we're discussing chapters 49 through 55 of Sarah J. Maas's debut novel, Throne of Glass. For a complete list of episodes and chapter breakdowns, be sure to check out our Instagram at the handle BookTok for BookTok.
Before we dive in, let's talk about S.P.I.L.T. Spoilers, perspective and interpretation, language, and themes.
Spoilers. While our discussion is about Throne of Glass, important context from the first 3 novels in the series will be discussed without spoiler warning. That is specifically Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire. This is not a read-along for anyone who hasn't read at least these 3 books. You will be spoiled from here on out, so please take this as your only spoiler warning. For all other book spoilers beyond Heir of Fire and other SJM works, we will keep those at the Breadcrumbs and Broomsticks section at the end of the episode.
Perspective and interpretation. What we discuss in this episode are strictly our personal interpretation of the text. We do not speak for Sarah J. Maas and in no way know her intentions for her books or characters. We also know our listeners have their own personal views and opinions, and we encourage you to share your thoughts with us because every perspective and interpretation is worth exploring.
Language. Even though I try to keep a swearing to a minimum for my mom, no, I don't. I've given up so long ago. Explicit language does occur.
Themes. We also discuss some heavy subjects throughout the podcast that can include themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death. While we will do our best to give trigger warnings for the darker themes, we will discuss these topics when they are important to the text. Listener discretion is advised.
As always, we love keeping the conversation going because our listeners are so good at finding things we've overlooked or completely missed. You can share your interpretation of the text with us by posting on social media, tagging us in stories, sending us DMs, or submitting to the form on our website. It's like BookTok for BookTok.com. You can check us out. We also post more exclusive content and host live streams for our Patreon supporters. You can find us at patreon.com/BookTok for BookTok.
The question we ask ourselves this week is our question we started with at the beginning of the season. This may be Sarah J. Maas's most epic series and debatably one of the most epic series in the modern fantasy genre. How does the Throne of Glass novel fare as a first novel, and does it adequately set up the rest of the series for us?
The theme we'll see in this section is freedom. I really thought by the episode 10 we would have had the beginning nailed down, and the listeners don't know this because we'll have edited perfectly, but we struggled through that. I struggled.
I started noticing how every time there was an "and" in the script, you skipped it. There were no "ands" that were
really
said. Yes.
Really? Bold them next. That's didn't know that about me. We will not do any ands here. So we start chapter 49. Just first, give this moment. This is our last episode of Throne of Glass of the first book.
It came up real fast.
It came up so fast, and yet when you think about December to now, which is March 16th, that's not, we thought we would be done recording by like early February.
Yeah. But life happens.
Life happens, and here we are. It's exciting. It's, welcome. You've done this journey with us, guys. So let us continue. We start chapter 49, and we are in Dorian's perspective. And at this point, Celaena is getting her ass kicked by the demons that literally no one else can see, except for Cain and Nehemia. Now, remember, in the previous episode, Cale went over to Celaena, and he like put his hand by the chalk line. And Dorian, sorry, I was just saying I don't say ands, and now I said and I'm in my head about it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's like the way I didn't realize I said edamame incorrectly. I'm discovering a lot. So this is really important though, because Dorian is just like, oh my God, I'm not doing anything. And you're going to hear me repeat this a lot throughout this episode because he repeats this a lot. So it's very poignant. It says, quote, "Stop it now," he said to Cale as his friend rose from his spot near the ring. But Cale only gaped at the flailing assassin, his face pale as death. Dorian is the prince here. He's the one who actually can do something, and he's telling Cale, stop it now. Like, he's expecting Cale to be the grown-up here and to step in. And what can Cale do that Dorian can't? You know what I mean? Like, Cale only takes orders from the king, but like, prince means something here. And Dorian is really going to struggle throughout the rest of this episode, but like really from the rest of the series, of the fact that like he can't do anything. He really gets stuck in many, many ways.
Well, yeah, and I hate when I start with, well, yeah, and yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so we're both in our head today. Dorian has been bred to be complacent. And that is his fatal flaw, but in some ways, also his burden, his trial, because he, up until this point, has probably just not known any better. He's not had anything to fight for. And I feel like this moment is very telling. Dorian ultimately sees Cale as someone who has power, who can get things done, who is able to, kill champions at the drop of a hat or, order guards around. And so in Dorian's eyes, Cale must have more power as captain of the guard and, just being well-trained in general. What Dorian realizes, though, is that Cale is just as powerless as Dorian. And that's when he gets in his head of, oh, but I should have power. I'm a prince. Of course I should have power.
Yeah, but then he'll like flip to the other side of saying, well, at least Cale did something.
Right. Well, yes, because Dorian is going to feel really, really bad about himself. Everyone's going to feel really bad about themselves.
Except for Celaena.
Celaena feels great.
I know. Celena's thriving. She's like, I'm cutting off boys. I'm almost free. Thriving. 30, flirty, and thriving.
Yeah, she's not there yet.
Not yet.
She currently is on the ground. And Dorian watches her, quote, crawl away from Cain, her blood and saliva pooling onto the ground, which this is so terrible, but it gave me this visual of a dog that's been beaten by its owner, like trying to get away from the owner.
No one wants this visual. Everyone is in their car, is washing their dishes right now. They're shaking their head going, Amy.
But am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I hate it. You're right. Because especially since she's been linked to being a dog this entire time. So I see it.
Yep.
It's not your fault. SJM wrote this. Now we are in Celaena's perspective, and we can see that the shadow demons are coming at her left, right, and center.
And while this attack is going on, Celaena has this moment of self-pity and thinks, quote, light and darkness, life and death, where do I fit in? The thought sent a jolt through her so strong that her hands fumbled for anything to use against Cain. Not like this. She'd find a way. She could find a way to survive. I really don't like this whole light and darkness, life and death, where do I fit in? I think it's very, very clunky. It takes me out of the narrative, and I just have to put it out there because it doesn't work.
Interesting. Can you tell me more about it?
So if you go to the specific chapter, let me pull it up. I should have pulled it up sooner. So we're in Dorian's point of view. Then it goes to Celaena's point of view. Here the dead surrounded her, waiting. The shadow thing that was Cain stood nearby watching, his burning eyes, his only distinguishing feature. Darkness rippled around Cain like shreds of clothing in the wind. She would die soon. And then she thinks, light and darkness, life and death, where do I fit in? How
Mhm.
is that a thought you have when you're about to die?
I mean, it's a very poetic thought for her about to die. It
She's not poetic.
No.
It's not Celaena.
You're right. It would be an interesting if it wasn't her thought, I think it would work more.
Right.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's the fact that it's her thought. I agree. That's not a very Celaena thing for her to kind of do or say. I will make a claim later on in this chapter, in the next chapter, when she wins, she kind of starts laughing hysterically.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's like ready to call quits in so many times of her life, like not just now, but like even this thing here, it isn't her doing that. Like I think the
Mm-hmm.
like light or darkness, life or death, like I can understand what you're saying, where it's like I would it would make more sense for me if there was another thing of like, you know what, I'm out. I don't know if I can do this anymore. I am so tired of fighting for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me it just feels like this is a thought maybe the author
Mhm.
had a line she wrote and was like, I want to fit this in somewhere.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
is where it ended up because there's lots of references to darkness, but there's no reference to light. There's no reference to life. Celena's not really ever struggled with this idea of do I belong in the light versus darkness? It's always been I'm very comfortable in darkness, right?
Mm,
So it just is incongruent
yeah.
with her thought processes throughout the rest of the novel. Like there was no groundwork to make this thought feel really important or
Yeah.
meaningful.
Yeah, if she struggled more with the idea of being an assassin, like we know she doesn't like being an assassin, but at the same time, like there wasn't a grappling with it as much as, coming to this conclusion would have had, right? Because light and darkness is like her own morality, right? Like, am I
Right.
evil? Am I good? And she touches on it, but not to the point where that this would have a more significant meaning. I can see what you're saying. Thank you for elaborating. So the door opens. We learn Nahimia is the one who unlocks it. And quote, from another world, Elena swept down, cloaked in golden light. The ancient queen's hair glittered like a shooting star as she plummeted into Aurelia. So her hair, starlight, we're getting that like same kind of, moonlight, ethereal type of description. But there's also going to be more descriptions to golden light. And I think that's very fascinating because I think earlier in this book, there's been a lot of establishing that light didn't necessarily mean good,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a hard shift by the end of this book where light is going to be freedom. So, I can have fun with this thinking, okay, well, does that mean, there's almost like freedom for her to be with Kale, since Kale's been associated with light? Is the Kale removed from it completely? So I'm like, ooh, different interpretations that we can shift and change.
I must have been in a bad mood when I read this chapter. I think you make a great note, Jack. My note is this moment of Elena coming through and coming to save Celaena doesn't feel earned. And Nehemiah's explanation later on in this, in a few chapters, explains it away, but didn't necessarily make the moment feel earned. It almost felt cartoonish to me.
Mm,
There wasn't enough build up to sense that Elena was always close by,
yeah.
but on the other side of a door that she was trying to get through.
Hmm.
Not even in the battle was there this reference to like, if there's this other power, it's just beyond her reach, or
Yeah.
whatever the
Yeah.
case is. Just
I'll make a point in a couple chapters when Nehemia is like, I've been fighting Cain this whole time. We've been going back and forth, and I've been putting out every demon he comes in, I've been getting rid of. And other than the word marks under Celena's bed, I had the question of, is there enough proof for that? Like, was there enough clues? And to your point here, if Nehemia had like looked over Celena's shoulder at one point and kind of been like, huh, if she had kind of brushed her forehead or something saying, oh, I thought I saw something there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm the groundwork. I'm trying to find groundwork for you.
I mean, Nehemia has stared at Selena's forehead as if there's a mark there. She has done that earlier in the book,
Okay.
but it's this idea that, Elena only came to Celaena in dreams or on Sam Hewen.
Yeah.
And there was not enough reference to Celaena trying to access Elena any other time
Mm,
for
hmm.
this to make sense. Because later, Elena's going to say, you knew when you called that I would come.
Mm.
But how did she know? She doesn't. Like, she's never tried that before.
Well, I mean, and you get a whole section of Celaena being annoyed that Elena hadn't visited her in a while earlier in the book. Before Elena comes and visits her to tell her about the poison, she was
Sure.
like, still no sign from Elena type thing. So it's not like, so maybe I'm just saying evidence of Elena not showing up when she called.
Yes.
You know? But let's like keep going. So Celaena and the reader are seeing Elena. I hate the "ena" repetitiveness of it. But they're seeing her differently for the first time. Quote, "Through fading eyes, Celaena saw a crown of stars glittering atop of Elena's head, her silver armor shining like a beacon in the blackness." At this point, we are seeing not just a queen, but a fighter. This makes her request to Celaena different at the beginning of this whole series, right? Of this book, where she says, you know, hey, I'm going to need you to fight, you know, and like really rally for me. And it's not just a queen saying this. This is a warrior saying it to another warrior. Also, consistency, crown of stars.
Which I don't know why it took me until this chapter to be like, oh, that's why Dorian's associated with stars.
Yeah,
because he's
right.
her descendant. And
you're right.
He's always, you know, when Celaena interacts with him, it's starlight shot through her, or there were stars in his eyes, etc. So
good point. I missed that too.
My note.
Yeah, good note. Elena then draws a mark on Celaena's forehead to help her purify the poison from her body. And this is very similar to when the little girl at the temple marks Celaena. And if you remember, that little girl, you know, Celaena was at the temple and she was like, please don't mark my forehead. She comes in, marks her forehead. And we talked about like that little girl kind of almost representing her own childhood, like the younger version of her. And I almost like this where it's like, you know, maybe it's kind of a callback of her own childhood, her own younger self purifying her from her deeds of being an assassin.
Interesting. I do like that, this idea of like it's her past, including her own, as we know and is alluded to in this episode, her ancestor purifying Celaena of what's taken place up until this point. We then move into chapter 50, and this is the point where Celaena is starting to be poison free. The in-between has kind of faded away, and she is very, very hurt. As she stands, quote, "The wind caressed her face and swept her hair behind her in a billowing sheet of gold. I will not be afraid. A mark burned on her forehead in blinding blue light." Now, in chapter 49, we didn't discuss it, but one of the magics that Elena uses is wind magic. And so there are a couple references to wind here and in later chapters that I wonder if they are meant to be references to Elena. Does she in some ways embody the wind, or the wind embody her? Because this moment feels like Elena kind of like caressing her, encouraging her, and saying goodbye.
I mean, and it's very much like when the tapestry moved, right? And there was that rose-scented wind and everything. So good point.
Celaena gathers the strength to fight and defeat Cain. When she does so, quote, "Celaena shot forward as fast as an arrow of Diana." Now, this is a callback to Yulmus, the same scene that Jac just spoke about, where the child dressed as Diana marked Celaena and gave her the golden arrow. And I feel like that action is, in fact, like Jac said, mirrored here by Elena marking Celaena, but this time Celaena becomes the arrow instead of being just gifted the arrow.
And she accepts it.
She accepts it.
Last time she was ready to sell it.
Right. But this time she accepts it. And it's also a breadcrumb for future events. And lastly, I have to point out now, I know as avid SJM readers, we all know the signs of evil in SJM's writings. They're pretty consistent from book to book and series to series. But this is her debut novel. So I have to call out those monikers when they appear, because this is technically the first time they ever appear. So when Celaena looks at Cain, quote, "She could have sworn his eyes glowed like coals." Now, this lore is important, as I said, to the entire series and SJM's writing in general. So we have to call it out. It's established, and now we may move on.
I mean, it's almost guaranteed that when SJM says, it's almost like, and it's like, yep, it is. It is fact.
She could have sworn. Yeah.
It is fact. I mean, it's interesting because she's gotten herself so into that now that I wonder if she thinks about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, right? Celaena, even now that the poison's gone and she is super injured, she's still and it would just like a little blunt end of a stick. She still kicks his ass, and she's able to kill him, but
Kicks
quote,
whose ass?
Cain's ass. It's who we've been talking about. Yes, kicks Cain's ass. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure it's clear.
Okay, yeah. She kicks Cain's ass, and quote, for a heartbeat, she considered killing him right there, so he couldn't tell anyone what he knew about her parents, about the word marks and their power. If the king knew any of that, her hand trembled with the effort to keep from diving the spearhead into his neck. But Celaena lifted her bruised face to the king. I feel like this speaks volumes about her character. She has every reason to kill him, and that's more than just him knowing her secrets, mainly because he's a mass murderer and a serial killer of kinds. Like, I would say the first reason to kill him is the fact that he's evil, and a monster who can summon demons. Throwing that out there. But we've also, and then you have the fact that he has her secrets. I wonder if she would have been more comfortable killing him if he didn't have her secrets. Because now,
Interesting.
yeah, because I feel like she sees it personal, right? Like she looks at this and is like, I think she realizes that she wants to kill him because some of the motivation is keeping his secrets, or is for her to like him to have her secrets die with him, which then makes it for her clock it of being more of a personal death rather than a quote unquote justified death, right? And I think that's why she looks at the king in this moment, because she is differentiating herself and thinking, I am different.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting thought. I had never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way until I started talking. So,
Amazing how that happens.
I know. It's like if people realized how much it's on the fly sometimes. Like we take so many notes, but sometimes. Celaena winning sets the beginning of her path in her mind, right? To freedom. And she's not wrong, except this is going to be a much larger path consisting of 6 more books. And it's like, ooh, you're free, but it's going to take a long time to get there.
Yeah, it's just the beginning.
It's just the beginning. And it's all around very overwhelming for her. Quote, huddled on the ground, hot tears slid down Celaena's face. She'd won. Through the pain, Celaena began laughing. Like I was saying a little bit earlier, this feels very hysterical laughter for her. I mean, if you think about it, at this point of her life, how many times that she's almost died, right? From her childhood to getting imprisoned to her entire career as an assassin. And like here's another moment of like, holy shit, I lived again. And I'm sure it's kind of that hysterical of like I have to keep going. We're gonna continue this. Okay.
It does feel like one of those where it's like, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. And I'd rather laugh because I'd rather they think I'm crazy than I'm weak.
Yeah. Which sucks because then the king gives her shit about crying later.
Yeah, of course. Asshole. Right before this moment, Celaena noticed that, quote, Dorian, as if released from a spell, dashed to her, throwing himself to his knees beside her, murmuring her name again and again. I like to think that there's a little bit of a parallel between Celaena being poisoned and Dorian's own self-restraint up until this point. In its own way, his restraint and this, he's in fight, flight, or freeze mode, and really he just froze. And it's almost a poison of his own making because of the fear he has towards his father, the fear he has towards doing the wrong thing, and genuinely his inability to stand up for anyone or anything.
Yeah.
And so in this moment, just like Celaena has been purified of her poison, I feel like Dorian has been purified of that restraint that he's put on himself, that self-imposed restraint, because this is a turning point for him. He's been released, and we're going to see, as much as he belittles himself, it's because he wants to be different now.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. His journey is also a sad, weird journey too.
So sad.
Yeah. And that's because Dorian is a very sad boy. He was sad from the first moment we saw him. He loves being sad. He is the very definition of the torture poets department. He loves to torture himself. Quote, he should have stopped it when Cain first hit her. He should have done something other than watch when she had so clearly been drugged. She would have helped him. She wouldn't have hesitated. Cale even had helped her. He knelt down beside the edge of the ring. And it's like, yes. Yes, the answer to all that is yes. He does give points that if he had interfered, then the king would have been like, she's disqualified. she loses, right? So like there are valid reasons as to why he didn't do something, but
Mm-hmm.
there's small ways of support that he really could have shown. That's his champion. He could have cheered for her, he could have like called out for her. But like Celaena's mentality of like her is like, I'm free. And then like that's her whole journey throughout the whole series is like how to become free. His is also struggling with, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
help. I want to help. I want to do something and I cannot do anything.
Yeah. Which, again, it's just a sign of growth for him. Like him realizing he's a pacifist
Yeah.
and that he lacks power. Um, and that makes him pathetic. And he realizes just how pathetic he is now.
You were not happy when you were writing this.
I was not.
He is a pathetic asshole little bitch boy. All right, we'll continue. Did you write your notes? Yeah, you wrote your notes yesterday.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
I copied and pasted from my notes on the train. So I must have been upset that I was going to work when I wrote my notes.
You start your metaphors. Dorian is like the office gossip who just can't keep it to themselves. All right, so back to the story though. We have a writing moment that I don't remember SJM doing prior to this, where she switches POV in like mid sentence. Now there was that moment where she kind of like hints to we call it inconsistency chapters ago, but it wasn't like a flat out shift. So I'm just more like calling these out for the writers out there to be able to appreciate. Quote, Dorian glanced towards Caltaine and Parrington. In doing so, he missed the look exchanged between Kane and his father. The soldier pulled out his dagger, but Cale saw. Kane raised his dagger to strike the girl in the back. And then at that point, we get into Cale's point of view. And it's a good example as to why third person can be easier in these moments, right? Because if you're in the first person, you become very limited on what the character is doing, on like what the character can see. So by doing this, and you're able to, we talk about third person being very narrow and being farther back. So this is a good example of starting as a narrow third person, kind of taking a shift back and being able to switch. I think she did it very seamlessly in this one.
Yeah, I think she does a very good job in this moment, and I like to think of it like being the camera on a film set, right? We're not literally in Dorian's point of view, right? We're not literally looking through Dorian's eyes. We're the camera on his shoulder, and the camera has now shifted to be on Cale's shoulder in the moment, which is very cinematic.
Yeah.
And does allow the author and the narrator more flexibility in telling a complete story, which I think she does well here.
Yeah. I was on a first date last night, as Amy knows. Will not be going on a second date, although he kept asking me the name of the podcast, and I was like, sure, there's a lot of content, but hope he doesn't listen. Anyway,
Did you tell him the name?
Yeah, but I was like, good luck remembering. Two, good luck listening. There's so much stuff. Anyway, but one of the things that I was talking to him about was like the freedom that third person past tense gives you. And I was giving an example like Onyx Storm, which is going to be part of our spring book club, so you'll hear more of our thoughts on that sometimes that first person, especially present tense, really limits you. And so just something for the writers out there to consider, because I know writers like to listen to this podcast. So yeah, now we're officially in Cale's point of view, and we see him make his first kill ever. Quote, Cale leapt between them and plunged his sword through Kane's heart. Blood erupted everywhere, showering Cale's arms, his head, his clothes. I could really picture this. It's as if like the blood has been building up inside of Kane, like all the warriors that he's killed has been absorbed into him. Like we know he's taken their power, then it's like, oh shit, he's been taking their blood too. Like you can kind of just see this explosion onto Cale. But also, this is a big shift for Cale, right? His mindset has been completely changed. He's about to kind of go in his own little spiral. Who he is as a person has shifted. And in a way, you can almost view the blood as baptismal, because he's now entered this other type of club, right? He's entered the I've killed someone club, which, like, you know, you're the guard.
Captain of the
Captain of the
Guard.
Guard.
I'm shocked it hasn't happened
I know,
before
like,
now.
talk about, like, us having zero sympathy, like, no, you kill someone, you're a captain of the guard, suck it up. It's,
Seriously.
you know, I can have, it's very easy for me to have lack of sympathy without me being in there with actually killing, but, like, evil,
Yeah.
evil man. I would like to imagine if I saved your life, Amy, I would have zero regrets.
I like to think that too.
Yeah, yeah. That I'd have zero regrets, or you'd have zero regrets
Oh,
if you
I'd
killed
have
someone.
zero. I know us, and we'd be like, I should feel guilty, but no, I don't feel guilty. I
I would
don't feel
probably
guilty. I
we'd
don't feel
cover it in
guilty.
therapy once, and then be
Yeah.
like, I'm actually sleeping really well.
Yeah, I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
Now, Kale will say, and in this moment, the narration says, and he will say later as well, that he doesn't understand how or why he did this, right? He just kind of acted on instinct. And in some ways, you can think, well, he doesn't know his own heart. Like, if he knew his own heart, he would understand, like, I'm doing this because I love Celaena and I want to protect her. I'm not going to let her die. So, again, I mean, he and Celaena both are kind of struggling to understand themselves. But at the end of the day, if he can't understand he loves Celaena and that's why he's protecting her, I don't think they're going to work. However, I do want to say, knowing that maybe at one point Kale was supposed to be endgame, this moment also feels very mate coded. That primal protectiveness that mates have, that they can't control themselves. That's how this read to me, which makes me wonder if it was put there to be that, to allude to that at one point and never taken out.
Yeah, I completely agree, because we know SJM is consistent in her writing. And when there is I was so protective, I didn't even know what I was doing, you know, like when it's just instinct completely takes over like that, you know, you have instinct that took over Kale, who now I'm trying not to reference because we said breadcrumbs and broomsticks for later. So I'm going to be alluding to things, but think about another series that she has where one character is literally crawling across the floor trying to get to another character, and we find out about them being mates. That you can't, like, Celaena being like her ass getting kicked and Kale like trying to reach out to her, trying to get to her as much as he possibly can, and then saving her like this. We know that originally he was endgame. That shifts, that changes. However, you can't tell me that this isn't, you know, like there wasn't that moment where SJM was writing this. And I think people don't realize, like, you know, the characters changed the story.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the ways, then the characters kind of changed their mind, and I have no doubt she was writing being like, oh my god, this is different.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm happy you point out the maid coded thing. Dorian, though, is absolutely wrecked about not being there for Celaena. In fact, we will continue to talk about it over and over and over again. Quote, he hated himself for not acting, for standing like a damn coward. He would make it up to her. He would see to it that she was freed. After that.
So Dorian doesn't finish his sentence. And usually in SJM's writing, granted, this is her first book compared to the rest, but in her later books, when a character is not willing to finish the thought, it's because they do not like the answer. And in my mind, Dorian not being able to finish this thought is not because he doesn't want to be with Celaena. I think he knows he is unworthy of her and is unwilling to admit that to himself.
Yeah, because like you said, it's when it's not normally, you're not able to admit it, right? And that's like with SJM's writing, especially, but also like other times in other writing. I think that's a very safe thing to say of, like, you know, it trickles off. The immediate continuation of the quote is he was done with politics and intrigue. He loved her, and no empire, no king, and no earthly fear would keep him from her. No, if they tried to take her from him, he'd rip the world apart with his bare hands. And for some reason, that didn't terrify him. So that, after that, ... and not being able to answer that ... but then being willing to say he loved her, it definitely makes me question of how much of those feelings are valid. You know, I think he does love her in his own way. I think that he loves the feeling she gives him. I think he loves the fact that he wants to be a better man. And I think that's like what he gets from her is like, wow, with you, I actually feel like it's possible for me to be a better person. And like, I can actually reach for the stars and be a king. But does he love Celaena herself?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think the answer at the end of the day is no. He loves the idea of her, right? He's always been infatuated with the idea of her, whether she represented rebellion or in this case now she represents him striving to be better, to be that better man, right?
Yeah.
She's the carrot that makes him run after, or pursue this life of I'm no longer going to be a pacifist.
Mm-hmm.
I can't actually name one thing he actually likes about her
Yeah.
that we know of, right? There's never been a thought of like, oh, he really loved this XYZ about her.
Yeah.
And that's okay. He can still love her, but it's not romantic love,
Yeah.
right?
My excitement made me choke on spit. Yes, completely. I agree.
And it works. I love the angst of this moment and how we're being set up for Celaena to break up with Dorian.
Yeah.
But what I love the most, I think, is the journey that they go on to have this very platonic relationship.
Yeah. And it sets itself up for a platonic relationship.
Yes. Yes.
Like, I think friends are a great example of wanting to be inspired by friends. Like when we have writer friends and we talk to them, I'm always like so hyped. I'm like, I'm gonna write too, or I think like friendships really shows that you can be inspired by people. Not that you can't be inspired by a romantic partner, like that's totally possible. But Kale listed many times what he admired about her,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
actual things that he could list, and we never got that from Dorian. So, you know, um, I wonder if people are mad at us by now about this.
Not, I mean, I think that I love all of this right now about Dorian because this really sets him on a path that
Mhm.
unfortunately is going to cause him a lot of pain, but makes him a better person.
Yeah.
And I love this turning point. And I also feel like at the end of the day, for Dorian and Celaena, they feel like soulmate friends. You know
Yes.
how you
Yeah.
have, I mean, other than the two of us, Jack,
Yeah.
we all have a friend that we're like, I need you in a past life.
Yeah.
You're my
Yeah.
soulmate, but not in a romantic way. And I
Yes.
do feel like Dorian and Celaena are
Or
that.
I
And
agree.
in a lot of ways, their ancestry sets them up for that as
Hmm.
well.
I agree. Oh, so well said. All right. Let's continue. You covered everything you needed to. So now we're in Caltain's point of view, and we are seeing just how much she's been set up, right? And I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead here because I'm already sitting here fighting off people who are just like, this is proof that she's evil. Because later on, Parrington, when he's talking to the king's gonna be like, did you use that ring on her? And then Parrington's like, nah, I didn't do anything. Like, this is like, I stopped doing that because it was starting to become a little obvious. Well, all right, here's proof that maybe we shouldn't trust the lying evil man. Just saying that. Quote, the pain in her head erupted, so violent that her vision went obsidian, and she stopped thinking clearly. What else is obsidian and dark? The ring. She then, like, from you know like she's very clearly like being manipulated by the Duke at this very moment to start giving herself up and being like, what, like, hey, the poison didn't work, why would she start doing that in front of everyone?
Right. No, even though she's not the most cunning, she has had enough smarts to use situations to her advantage. Think of when she interacted with the queen. This totally feels like retaliation and manipulation by Parrington because he didn't get his way. So he needs to make sure somebody else takes the fall for his plans being interrupted.
Yeah. And then, to go more into that quote, trying to keep her voice down, even as the pain in her head turned into a thunderous roar. She could scarcely think straight. She could only answer to the fury inside of her. The damn poison I gave her, she murmured so only Parrington could hear. Poison? Parrington asked so loud, Caltain's eyes grew wide. It's almost, I would almost argue that Parrington knew that Caltain was going to get caught no matter what. No matter if Celaena died or lived. I don't think he planned on Celaena living, but if Celaena had died, I still think he would have given up Caltain. And part of that is going to be because of his excitement to, more to abuse her when she's in prison, in the dungeons.
Yep. Which he alludes to later on. I just think of his ruddy, pocked hands now every time I think of him because he's so slimy.
Yeah.
He's awful. He is the worst of men.
Absolutely.
Now, this is Caltain's view of what's happening when Parrington tells the guards to restrain her and take her away. Quote, "Restrain her, please," the Duke said blandly, calmly, as if she were no more than a hysterical servant, as if she were nobody. This is the literal worst thing that could possibly happen to Caltain. It is the exact opposite of her ambition. She is the ultimate loser, right? Celaena has won her freedom. She has won the right to be the king's champion and ultimately her freedom. And so Caltain is in the exact opposite state, right? There has to be balance. And in this case, Caltain's on the losing end. We see that repeated in the way that the men treat her, right? On Celaena's side, Cale killed Cain to protect Celaena, and Dorian has whisked her up and carried her in a bridal carry to get her healed. For Caltain, though, she realizes, quote, Parrington had been planning this for too long, and she'd played right into his hands. He'd acted the besotted fool only to plunge a dagger into her back. This could have been Dorian, right?
Yeah.
Dorian could have done this to Celaena if he wanted to gain favor with his father. But instead he didn't. He fell in love with her. He wanted to use her, but he developed feelings, which is the exact opposite of Parrington, who pretended to have feelings so that he could use Caltain. They are the perfect opposites of each other.
Yes. Yeah.
And that continues to be the case here. They are both going to be used as weapons in, future books, and one gets their freedom and the other does not.
Yeah. It's so sad. We're in chapter 51, and Dorian is in a meeting with his dad, and the king's wondering, why should I sign the contract with Celaena? And the king says, quote, "She was rather disgraceful at the duel. I don't know if I can have a blubbering woman as my champion, poison or no." And, even while poisoned, women can't cry, and like, she was like, oh, she was poisoned and had her ass kicked and was about to die. Ugh, how uncouth.
Yeah, she's bleeding from an artery in her thigh and she has broken ribs. Ugh, whatever.
Jeez. Yeah. It's like, it's like, hey, he's evil. There's no redemption here.
Yeah. The king continues to mock Celaena and Dorian, and Cale. I don't remember. The king mocks Celaena and belittles Dorian, and maybe there's some mocking of Cale too. I can't remember. Quote, "I brought her, Celaena, here to do my bidding, not to meddle in the life of my son and empire." And this felt a lot like Dorian being upset about his purebred dog who fooled around with a mutt and had puppies that were not purebred. It feels a lot like the queen wanting to make sure Dorian is with a worthwhile woman who is a princess. It's the exact same thing. The king is viewing Celaena as messing around with the lives of the purebreds. What I love about this moment is that Dorian literally bares his teeth in response, showing that he is as much of a dog as Celaena in some ways. And for the first time, willing to show his protectiveness, which, again, is growth.
Yeah, I just realized something, and I'm going to say this without any kind of spoilers or anything like that, but I think that it's a good clue for what's to come, in the sense that, that the king says, "I brought her here to do my bidding." He didn't. Dorian did. So I think that's a good moment of, the reader should ask themselves, why does the king feel like he was the one who brought her there to do his bidding?
Yeah.
So,
Good
just
point.
pay attention to like what's actually being said and what's being claimed. And, I think one of the best things that SJM does is like unforgivable evil characters are sexist. Like, that's always kind of like a good sign of, are they sexist? Or, and if the answer is yes, then normally there's like a no redemption arc for them. And I think to me, that's like, we should do that more often in our books. So here's what the king says, quote, "What a politician she would have made if she'd been born a man." And that is his compliment to Celaena. And it just reminds me of Philippa telling Celaena that she was so pretty that she might have been able to marry a lord or a prince if she just wasn't who she was.
Mm-hmm. It's just gross.
It's so gross. Dorian feels ready to finally make a stand, even though it's very small. Quote, "Perhaps he might someday work up the nerve to demand retribution for what his father had done to those rebels in Eelway. Not today, not yet, but he could make a start." And then he's like, "Daddy, can you not let Parrington hurt Nehemia, use her?" And it's like, oh, someone put their big boy pants on. I just feel like it just felt like such an underwhelming moment because he was like, "Not today, not tomorrow, but I can start." And it felt like the most bare minimum thing to have asked.
Yeah, but that's Dorian.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a huge step for him, for someone who's done nothing. I get it. I know I'm being harsh, guys, but it just felt like such a guy move for me, where it's like, sometimes guys are just like, "Wow, I'm making an effort." And it's like,
Yeah.
you did barely anything.
Yeah, you did below par what I would expect.
Great. You put away the dishes that you use because you needed to use a dish. You do not get points for that.
So I know we're harping on Dorian, but I will give him kudos. He is using his words and logic to overcome what Parrington has been doing, his scheming and his just evil agenda in general. And so it is a small way for Dorian to claim his power. He is a leader, and in his role as a leader, he has to use words to utilize his power over others. And this is one small way that Dorian has succeeded in doing so. And it's important for his journey that he's able to speak up in this moment. I also want to recognize that when Dorian was thinking about Nehemia earlier, while he was talking to his father, quote, "Dorian couldn't deny that he greatly admired the princess for daring to play in the first place." And what he's talking about is Nehemia providing Celaena with her staff from Eelway and the symbolism of it for Celaena to fight Cain with that staff. This, again, feels like growth. Dorian has been viewing Nehemia mostly negatively for her defiance, for her association with rebels. Not that he blames her, but that, it would be really messy if she and Celaena spent a lot of time together. They're going to cause a lot of trouble. But now he's like, you know what? Good for you. Good for you for trying to cause trouble. And I point this out because, again, have to give Dorian credit where we can. But we also have to recognize Celaena is not the only character to have developed in this book. Dorian's development has been small, but important.
Yes.
And obviously, Chaol has grown a lot too.
Yeah. Agreed. We should give props where props are due. But lots more props to SJM for developing her characters. Dorian, even then, I don't give Dorian credit. I give his creator credit. I could leave this in the breadcrumb section, but this is a shorter episode, so I'm going to talk about it here. Nehemia and Celaena have a talk, and why Celaena was able to see what she saw, right? And they say, quote, "I don't think Beltane intended that effect, but it reacted to your blood in that way. Magic calls to magic." Celaena shifted uncomfortably at the words. And it's like, she's kind of like, hey, magic calls to magic. Maybe you got some magic. Maybe you got magic. Yeah.
So since we're talking about breadcrumbs, there's another one when Celaena is thinking about the fact that she continues to have dreams. Quote, "Her dreams last night had been filled with Nehemia and Elena. We learned from Nehemia that she's the one who helped open the door for Elena to come through and help Celaena. We don't yet quite understand just how connected Nehemia and Elena are. And so it feels very breadcrumby for Celaena to be dreaming of the two of them together."
Yeah. Yep.
Just putting that out there.
Love it. Nehemia tells Celaena that she spent months banishing Cain's demons. And we don't have to go back too much on this, but that was my question of was there a lot of clues? I think we already kind of talked about build up and setup there. Now,
and the answer is no, there were no fucking clues.
Yeah, I would have liked her fighting more.
This is a cop-out. This isn't the cool, Dumbledore revealed at the end how he was involved the whole time.
Yeah.
because that work was done. This
Yeah.
Nehemia was just not there. And that's absence does not equate to setup.
Yeah, truth. Oh, that hit hard. Absence does not equate to setup. I hope everyone takes note of that. I think it's absolutely valid. And I know sometimes like authors get worried that there's too like it's going to be caught too early. And I think you're better off with clues that might be too obvious versus there being no clue at all. And you're just like, where the hell did this come from?
Yeah, I'd rather see it coming from a mile away
Yeah.
than to not see it at all.
Yeah, agreed. Now, at one point in their conversation, Nehemia calls Celaena Alentia, and it's her special name. And by using Celaena's new name while she's being honest, I think that it's kind of like that moment of I can be even more honest with you because I'm calling you by the name of what I like in my language and what I would call my people. So I think that it just is another good example of use of names and titles.
Yep. I agree. At the end of the scene, Nehemia asks Celaena if she can walk fleetfoot. Quote, "Do you mind if I take her for a walk? I need to feel the wind on my face today." Now, this goes back to this idea of the wind representing Elena and the knowledge that we have, which is a breadcrumb, that Nehemia and Elena are connected. So in this moment, it feels like, or I ask myself the question, is Nehemia going to commune with Elena, to communicate with Elena?
Yes. Good job. Wow. Good job training you. Good. That's a pat on the shoulder.
Actually, that was me on your couch last night.
Oh, good job, couch. So we are in chapter 52 in Celaena's point of view, and Dorian comes to visit her. And this isn't the chapter where she breaks up with him, but you can see the thoughts starting to come together. Quote, "She tried to reach out to grab his jacket, but it hurt too much and he was too far away." And I think that SJM's using a lot of like little pretty symbolism in her writing right now, but like physically it hurts too much because she's been beaten up, but also emotionally I think it hurts too much to reach out to him. Dorian is super upset from the final challenge. I just keep talking about it, and he tells Celaena that he hasn't been able to sleep. The woman who is still black and bruised and ribs were broken and has a gash in her leg, and he's like, I haven't been able to sleep. And Celaena then comforts him. Quote, "Here," she said, as gently as she could, patting a space between her. "Come sit." Obediently he sat, though he kept his back to her as he put his head in his hands and took several deep breaths. It's very much a role reversal. It's very much, like because Celaena was the dog. She was the one who was to be tamed, to be trapped. And now we have Dorian here who is the dog and is being obedient to her, order to sit. I'm sympathetic to Dorian because it is very hard to see someone you love and care about get their ass beaten, right? It is a thing amongst women and male partners where it ends up being that women end up having to comfort the men so much more when it's like women who are the ones who are actually struggling through things. I don't know. It's a very nuanced situation. People who get it are listening will get it. People who don't get it are listening are like, what the fuck are you saying? Moving on. Dorian again complains about having done nothing. Quote, "I should have sliced Cain open the moment he laid a hand on you. Instead, I stood there as Cale knelt at the sidelines. I should have been the one to kill Cain. Me? Why couldn't it have been me to kill him?" It's so pouty. But the answer is he could have done all the above. Like, he could have gone and knelt at her side. He's a prince. He could have easily have killed Cain. Even more easily. What's his dad going to do about it? He's upset about all these things, and he's complaining to the person that he didn't help about not helping. It just reminds me of, like, guys who cheat on their girlfriends or wives start crying that they cheated on them. Have you seen videos? There's like women on TikTok who will post videos and it's like guys throwing a temper tantrum. They're like, "Why are you crying? You're the one who did this."
Yeah.
And they're like, "But I'm just upset that I didn't do something." But once again, this is Dorian hyper-focusing on the fact that Cale did something and he didn't do anything. And Cale was the one who stepped up And, there's more resentment for his friend. Like, I don't feel like this in this book. I didn't get that like super brotherly vibe between them, because every time that Cale kind of like might have hinted or Dorian teased him for liking Celaena, that's when Dorian's would swoop in more when it came to Celaena. And he's made a lot of snide comments to Cale throughout this book, and it's going to continue. So I think that sometimes the hang up right now is more the fact that Cale did two things. And it's like, once again, this big brother figure of his was able to do stuff that he couldn't do. So I think it shows more about his issues with Cale.
I agree. They have that brotherly connection in the way that they annoy the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
More than anything, and how they're constantly comparing themselves to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree, in this moment, Dorian feels crap about himself because he knows Cale is more worthy than Dorian is of Celaena.
Yep.
Right before Dorian's statement about slicing Cain open, Celaena tells Dorian, quote, "You did as anyone should have done. If you'd interfered, I would have been disqualified." And then he's like, "Well, I should have sliced Cain open." Now, Dorian has grown, but obviously not that much. He is still so focused on himself and his actions and what actions would have made him feel better.
Yeah.
If he had acted, instead of being like, "Yeah, I know I didn't have a choice. Celaena would have been disqualified. That's not what she wanted. She wants to be able to fight for her freedom."
Mm-hmm.
Instead, no, I should have killed him no matter what you say.
I should have freedom.
Been
Right? I should have done something. I like the second he even hit you, like that just shows how much he doesn't understand Celaena in the moment that she was in. The second he laid a hand on you, I should have done something. It's like, no.
And that's the thing, is like Dorian still has a lot of growth to do. He's not meant to be a knight in shining armor. Celaena never wanted that from him or anyone. So they're just very mismatched.
They're very mismatched. And I think you're getting, I'm going to make more evidence. I'm going to bring more evidence as to like why he really is not focused on Celaena, because again, here she is, black and blue, still very injured, can't do much. And he flicks her on the nose. Quote, "Dorian," she began, and he flicked her on the nose. "Ow," she said, wrinkling her nose. And it's nothing. It's a cute little flick of the nose.
Insensitive.
She's so hurt. She is hurt everywhere. And it continues because then Dorian is the one who then, quote, leaned down forward and kissed her and made her jaw hurt. Why? Don't touch this woman. She is beaten up. She barely survived. You saw her like spit up saliva and blood and like barely made it out of there alive, and it hurt her. But I also love that this kiss is, in the pain that she has, I believe shows some more symbolism, right? The fact that it made her jaw hurt, I think it shows the symbolism of like, this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
This is, this doesn't feel good. Like, she's not saying like he kissed her and she relaxed into his arms. It's, I'm in pain.
Yeah. Well, and there I go again. I completely agree with you. Celaena's focus on Dorian throughout this entire novel has been purely physical. She sees him, her heart flutters, she goes red, she wants to kiss him. So naturally, in this moment when she's no longer attracted to him, her body hurts. She's not in the moment with him anymore. She's only focused on her physical condition, which I don't blame her. Earlier, when Dorian sat on the bed, he ends up lying in bed next to her, and she puts her head on his shoulder. Quote, "Though her body almost seized up in agony as she turned over, Celaena put her injured hand on his stomach." SJM is sending us a clear, putting up a clear sign, like these two don't belong together.
Yes. Yep.
It is damaging her.
Yep. It hurts her. It shouldn't hurt. For the first time, we are now in the king's point of view. And we see him talking to Parrington, and they're talking about Caltaine. And the king asks, quote, "Were you using the power on her?" "No, I've relaxed it recently, as you suggested," the Duke replied, rotating the obsidian ring around his thick finger. What else was obsidian? Caltaine's vision. Her vision went obsidian. Anyone who was like, look, evidence that Caltaine did it on her own. It's like, let's not trust the predator. Let's not trust this guy.
He's literally fidgeting.
Yeah.
as he's talking to the king. That's usually a sign of lying.
Right? Like, did you do this? No. Like just play with my ring. And the reason why I say that he's a predator is because, the king is like, oh, you're going to get Celaena out of the dungeon. And the Duke's like, nah, I like her in there. It's going to make her a little bit more pliant. Let's see how she acts afterwards. And this is more predatory behavior because he gets to control her more. He gets to manipulate her, and he gets to be the one in control of her freedom and her desire to stay alive, which is, again, more manipulation, more lack of consent, and just all around, like, he's like, oh, I want her to be desperate so much so that she'll do whatever I say. That's not good. That's bad, guys.
Yep. Just not good.
No. 10 and 10 would not recommend.
So for those of you who continue to doubt Celaena, the king confirms for us in his talking to Parrington, quote, Cain proved the physical transformative effects, and Celaena proves the ability to influence thoughts and emotions. Celaena may actually have never actually wanted to be with Dorian.
She might have just thought he was cute. Yeah. It might have been a passing thought of, oh,
he's attractive.
He's attractive. I would love to be queen. I think about that all the time with Theo, James. Like it's like there's a what like at the gym yesterday where I was like, the cute guy opened the door and I was like, hi, but the same, like a passing fancy, right?
Yeah.
It could have been as brief as that. And if Parrington was near me, would be like, now be obsessed with that guy who held open the door.
Yeah.
It could be just, I'm mad. I agree. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. It could have been literally the most mundane feelings. I'm quiet because I want everyone to sit in that. We get this image of the king as he gives Parrington his final command. It's described as, quote, the fire in the mouth-shaped fireplace flickered and green light filled the shadows of the room. It reminds me a lot of Celaena when we were talking about her having that demon mouth where it was like, she had red teeth and everything. But this time we got an actual kind of demon mouth thing with this fireplace.
And it's very ominous, especially now that we know and we've seen that green light is associated with magic and evil.
Yep.
And solidifies for us in our own minds that something evil is lurking around with the king and Parrington.
In chapter 53, we are in Celaena's point of view, and she is now about to break up with Dorian. And this is the day, and she's like, wow, I'm feeling great. This is such a good day to break up with someone.
And it's been a week since the fight.
Yeah. It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
2 weeks since I turned around and said that I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's been. So we get this clue of like that this is just a magical day because, quote, outside the sunny afternoon had transformed the snow into dripping, shimmering water that cast light about the whole bedroom. We know that snow has represented very bad things for Celaena. She hasn't had good feelings about it. She almost died in snow this past time. And now it's being washed away. Again, we're getting this baptismal cleansing thing that's happening right now. And this reminds me a lot of when Celaena first went to the tomb and there was water, we talked around her feet, kind of cleansing it, preparing her. And the light here, I think, again, represents Elena and freedom and what's to come.
Which, because we've associated with Chaol so much, makes sense why maybe at this moment it feels like the two are connected. And maybe that was SJM's intention all along when Chaol was endgame. Except now it's just confusing. And maybe rightly so, because Celaena is going to be confused about Chaol in the next book. I also feel like the weather kind of comes back to last week's theory that Celaena is like Persephone. She's avoided death by Cain and therefore, avoided death by king. She's been able to kind of even though she's the king's champion, she's been able to separate herself from the king's orbit.
Yeah.
She has a little bit more autonomy right now. And in essence, it's like Persephone leaving Hades and she's returning to the regular world and Winter is leaving.
It just cracks me up. You have Cain and King and Elena and Celaena.
And Celaena and Chaol and Elena, and it's too many.
Words are hard. Words are high, hard. Literally proved what I was
trying
words
to
are hard.
say.
Yeah, words are hard. Cale shows up, tension is high, sexual tension is even higher. I'm so excited for the second book.
When Cale shows up, we're in Celaena's point of view still, and she thinks, quote, the world stopped when Cale entered instead. I just like, SJM's not even trying to hide it at this point.
Yeah. I truly and utterly believe that when she wrote this, she had no idea about what was to come in the later journey. I think she knew that the end of book 2 would probably happen the way that it did.
But not book 3.
But I doubt she planned for book 3. Because, yeah. So I think book 3 is when it all shifted her game plan and was utterly surprised of where it goes from there. Because I agree. I think that this is like her saying end game here.
Yep.
And Cale is checking out her legs. You know, he's like, you know, but also checking for injury, but also, you know, those legs. But at the same time, he's avoiding her and all the drama because he hasn't been there for a week. And Celaena is like trying to get a little bit closer to him. And, quote, she stopped barely a foot away from him and cocked her head. He wasn't wearing his sword. He's literally coming to her unguarded for this conversation. And, you know, you have this moment of like him becoming unguarded and is like, you know, very vulnerable, but you also have the significance of like, he just can't hold that sword again. He can't do that anymore. Like that, be that soldier again. And his trauma is something that at this point only Celaena can understand, and not the mentors that I'm sure he's had train over the years and the people that he reports to who have been through the actual same thing. Other than them, Celaena is the only one who can really understand what he's going through.
I also think the symbolism of him not wearing his sword is he's kind of lost his identity.
Ooh, yeah.
On this journey, right? Because the sword's pommel is an eagle, which represents his house, right? So for him to not be able to carry it, yes, is because he killed Cain, but he also doesn't know what to think anymore, whether he can trust himself or anyone else. And so when Celaena tries to comfort him and have a conversation with him, he deflects that conversation and instead asks Celaena about her parents, knowing she doesn't want to talk about her parents. And in this conversation, Celaena does answer his questions, but half the time she is lying, and she knows she's lying. She reminds us that she's lying because she doesn't want to remember what they look like. She doesn't want to admit to how Cain knew that they died. And why is that okay? I mean, Cale also can't be honest with her, right? He's not answering her questions about how he's doing and how he's coping after his first kill. So this is not great footing for the two of them on what should be like their next great adventure together, right? They're not starting out in an honest way, even though they're both trying to be vulnerable.
Celaena's like, I'm thriving. And Cale's over there being like, I'm having an existential crisis.
Yeah. Cale tries to leave because Celaena keeps trying to talk about Cain. But Celaena forces Cale to hug her. And I'm going to read a very long quote because I think it's important to compare to Dorian and what we just described about Dorian and Celaena in bed.
Where it physically hurt her. Every part of her was screaming. It just, she kept touching, kissing, and it was all pain.
Yep. Quote. He straightened and she crushed her body into his, even though it still aggravated her wounds to do so. Then, after a moment, his arms wrapped around her, keeping her close to him, so close that as she shut her eyes and breathed him in, she couldn't tell where he ended and she began. His breath was warm on her neck as he bent his head, resting his cheek against her hair. Her heart beat so quickly, and yet she felt utterly calm, as if she could have stayed there forever and not minded, stayed there forever and let the world fall apart around them. So she recognizes she's in pain, but she's like, I don't care. This is the most amazing, blissful feeling I've ever had.
It just aggravated. That's it. Just a slight aggravation, you know?
Yeah. Her jaw doesn't hurt. Her
body
shoulder
isn't
doesn't hurt.
seizing up. Yeah, like she's running, she's leaning into it, quite literally.
Right. With Dorian, all Celaena could focus on was the pain. But with Cale, the pain is secondary to just being with him. Being with him is the most important thing that she senses, feels about this moment.
Agreed. And it's a hot hug, you know, as far as hugs go.
It is if you want Kale to be endgame.
I mean, I don't know where he began and I ended, and he's breathing in the side of her neck,
Yeah,
regardless
it
of
is
whether
very sexual.
it's a hot hug. Like, regardless of whether you want them to be endgame. I mean, I obviously don't want them to be endgame, but I can appreciate a hot hug when I see one. I can appreciate, you know, what's funny is like I'm not romanticizing them. I am appreciating the feelings that SJM is giving me, where it truly and utterly feels like in this moment they are endgame, and I
Mhm.
like that she's manipulated my emotions. So
Yeah, I'm on board with.
yeah. So while they're hugging, Dorian comes in and Kale leaves immediately. Like, they jump away. And what's one of the first fucking things that Dorian says? Quote, I don't think he's recovered well from killing Cain, Dorian said. Obviously, she snapped. And they're just like, same girl. I'd snap at him. What a weird statement to say. Like, he hasn't really done a good job recovering from killing someone. Like, why is that the first thing that he has to point out? Why does that have to be because he doesn't want to say what he's thinking, right? Like, why are you guys hugging? What's going on? Like, I'm jealous. I have feelings. What does he do? He has to put down Kale in a very subtle way. I mean, for me, it's not subtle, you know. But, you know, some people might be like, he's just saying the truth that Kale hasn't recovered well. But it's such an unnecessary thing to say, you know. Like, no one needs to point out that he's not recovering.
Yeah, angry Amy was not present when when she read this, because I see what you're saying. I sensed the awkwardness of this moment, that he didn't have anything to grasp onto, so he grasped onto the obvious, which was
Mhm.
Kane's not doing well. Um, and maybe it's not said with as much sincerity as a friend should say about their friend.
Yeah, it just kind of like made it feel like him pointing out of like, wow, Kale can't handle killing someone.
Yeah,
Because he kept thinking about like, oh, if only I had killed Cain. You know,
yeah.
it's almost like, I'm not saying that this is what he's saying. I'm not saying that this is the subtext, but the vibes that I get, and you guys can disagree, but it felt very almost like
I
he's
would have
not
handled this.
handling. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
have been a champ the way you and I were. The way you and I were being like, like, this asshole can die, whatever. You know, it kind of
Yeah.
gave me that vibe where it's like, you know, it's easy to say something from the outside, but you're not on the inside. And this is a moment where Dorian is excluded. He's on the outside. He's never killed anyone.
Mhm.
Kale, like Celaena, has now. And so, of course, now by saying that, it's just like more it antagonizes Celaena more, because it's like, no, you're not part of this club. You do not get to comment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Dorian tries to get closer to Celaena, but Selena's like pure breakup mode. Quote, but she kept her distance as she looked out the window to the dazzling day beyond. The world was wide open and hers for the taking. She could step over that white line. That white line reminds me significantly of the white line between Kale and Celaena. Like,
Yep.
it, it is used very clearly and on purpose.
Mhm.
There,
Mhm.
like, you did not have she didn't have to say white line, but we had white line from the chalk, right? It could have just been like step into freedom, but white line is freedom, right? And white line and
Mhm.
freedom also means Kale, and what that could potentially mean. And she knows that she can't be free with Dorian.
Which, honestly, what this is alluding to is the fact that Dale Dorian is equivalent to being in the fighting ring with Kane.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
which then begs the question for me, was Dorian always a means to an end? Because this line definitely makes it feel like he was always a means to an end. And I
Yeah.
don't think that was SJM's intention.
No, I think a little bit was. Like, Celaena says, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but early on, she does say something along the lines of, like, you know, she doesn't say, I'm going to use Dorian so that I can get
Mhm.
what I want, but she does make a note that he is easy to flirt with and that flirting might help her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she gets real feelings for him, as much as we've argued that she doesn't have real feelings. I think they're as real as they can be.
Yeah.
I think she genuinely cares for him and learns to love him with like a pure platonic way. But yes, he was always a means to an end.
Yeah. And I think we really see that in this moment. And I think we see it again when, as they're breaking up, Dorian's like, well, we can keep it a secret from everybody. And Celaena tells him, quote, I have enough secrets. I don't need another one.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very interesting thing for an assassin to say. Secrets are currency for assassins. You deal in secrets, you use secrets to find, your target, kill them. It's just a necessary part of the job. And what I'm sensing from this conversation is that the secret of their relationship has lost value
Yeah.
because it's not secret anymore. Everybody knows now.
Yep. It's
And
like,
they're
you came crying to me and held me and carried me off. It's
Right.
not hot anymore.
right. She can't use Dorian as a means to an end anymore because he's made it too obvious.
Yeah.
And that makes Celaena sound really, really manipulative. And I ultimately don't think that she is. Like Jack said, I do think she genuinely cares about Dorian. But if we think about the secret of her relationship with Dorian in the context of her secret identity, her secret heritage, it makes sense that Celaena is saying this relationship is not as important or as meaningful as these other secrets that are an extreme burden for me, that are extremely precious to me. And I can't carry the weight of all of you. So
No.
sorry, Dorian. Goodbye.
Yeah. It's true. I agree. There's a lot that, I mean, secrets are hard in general. Like, it is a currency, but it's also carries just as much of a weight for her.
Yeah.
Like, there is so much for her to have to hold on to. And even though, like, on one side she can handle secrets like a champ, on the other side, it genuinely is too much for her.
Yeah. Yep.
Poor girl.
Especially as she cares about more and more people.
Yeah.
The secrets get harder and harder to carry.
Yeah. She was like, I wasn't even supposed to like you. Yeah. So literally, as Celaena is calling it off with Dorian, she feels great. Have you ever seen the photo of Nicole Kidman when she was getting a divorce from?
Yes.
And she's like walking in the sun, and it's after
Yeah.
she got a divorce from Tom Cruise, and she's just like, yeah, that's how it feels like to me. Like Celena's just here like dancing in the sun. Quote, the sunlight warmed her skin and the weight around her shoulders drifted away. Again, the sun, you could say, is Cale, and the breakup is, them leaving room for Cale to come in, but sunlight is also very much freedom. It's the freedom that Elena helped give her. And it's that, like I was saying, the freedom to choose Cale. So, but she is just loving every second of this.
Yeah. Never has anyone been so happy during a breakup.
Seriously. Celaena is blown away with the idea of being free. And I think that this is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this book, is the fact that Celaena values freedom. Like, she never let herself mentally even get here, right? She kind of talked about like, okay, well, I can do this in 4 years, I can be free. But now there's like an actual light at the end of the road. And she's just like, the reality of freedom means so much more. She's like, I'm not going to let this man drag me down. Like, I have actual things that I want here. And I can appreciate how much she really values freedom.
Yeah. I mean, she's basically saying it's better to be alone and free than to be saddled with a man.
Yeah. It's fun though, because good news, Celaena, you will be free way before 4 years, because the whole series takes like, I think, 1.5 years, if that.
Is that it?
I think it might be even less than that.
That's crazy. A lot happens.
A lot happens. So, she gets on the expedited freedom track. Not the track that I think anyone would really want, but
no.
And now we are in the last chapter, 54. We open with Cale's point of view. And while Dorian has been dealing with his inability of helping anyone and doing something, and Celaena has been embracing her freedom, Cale has been struggling with the fact that he killed someone. Quote, but he was still dead. Cain's eyes would open no more because of him. He would not draw breath because of him. His heart had stopped beating because of him. Cale's hand drifted to where his sword should have been. He'd thrown it in the corner of his room as soon as he returned from the duel last week. Mercifully, someone had cleaned the blood from it. Perhaps the guards who had taken Cale to his chambers and given him a strong drink. He's a changed man, and I can appreciate that he values life, that he can look at it and say, wow, this person really will not like this person's no longer alive because of what I did. I think he's focusing on the wrong things. He should be focusing on the evilness of that man.
Yeah, I agree. But, Cale has always been very black and white. And in some ways, he has become no better than the parts of Celaena he doesn't like, the assassin, right? He's always despised her assassin side. It's always been the side he's struggled with. And now he's equivalent to that side of her.
In his mind, which is funny because it's still like arguably that they're not equivalent, like she's
right.
Like it's funny. It shows how black and white he is mentally because he very much is now like Celaena. But if you were to talk about it in like the broader sense, you're like, actually, you were still very different than her.
Yeah.
But in his mind, he truly is no better than.
Yep. And Cale goes and looks for Dorian in Celena's apartments, where he finds Celaena kind of eating and just kind of hanging out by herself. And she tells Cale to not expect to find Dorian in her rooms in the future. When he asks Celaena why, quote, she popped a piece of bread into her mouth because I ended it. Just was a nice little food is power moment.
Yeah.
No matter what Celaena thinks about wanting Dorian, because there is a moment where she's like, she wanted him, she still liked him, but this was the better way. She's clearly also indicating she is stronger without him by the consumption of food.
Yep. And, even though she's, her legs are out again, you just can't stop looking at her legs. And though
her legs are up and her nightgown is hiked up too.
Yeah. I don't blame her. She probably has fantastic legs.
Oh, yeah.
So even for all this, though, he's still pretty weighed down. Quote, did she fret as he did? Did she constantly think about her blood-covered hands? But for all of her swaggering, for all of her gloating and parading about with hands on her hips, there was still something soft in her face. It gave him hope. Hope that he had not lost his soul in the act of killing. Hope that humanity could still be found. And honor could be regained. She had come out of Endovier and could still laugh. The things that he is focusing on is so interesting and shows just how much his moral code is so black and white.
Mm-hmm.
He feels like he has lost his honor. And that is everything to Cale, is his honor. How can you tell me that you feel like you've lost honor when you killed someone who was about to attack someone? You know what I mean? Like that, like Celaena would have died.
You don't feel honor that you killed a serial killer who's been killing people in the castle and eating their innards.
I realize, though, he doesn't know that yet.
True.
So in his mind, it's just someone I will say, okay, so in his mind, it's just another champion who has no relation to the murders. However, it's still another champion that was ready to kill Celaena.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like that's, to me, that's still a good enough thing, a good enough reason of like, he being Cain removed the, I don't know, safety training wheels, like the not be murdered sign by trying to hurt someone who was already like on the floor passed out. I mean, she wasn't passed out, but
Celaena could not defend herself at that point. Someone had to defend her on her behalf.
Also, who was holding her? Dorian. Are you saying that Dorian wouldn't have been injured in that attack? Like, let's be for real here. Someone was coming towards the two of them. Yes, the Cain was going to go for Celaena, but like, you got to protect Dorian. Any of the guards should have been there ready to kill Cain. Cain was coming at the prince, even though he wasn't aiming for the prince, but still in the proximity with a knife.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I don't know. I think it makes sense that he's struggling right now. I can't remember how he struggles with it in book 2. I hope he kind of gets over this because it feels very in the sense of like, did you forget your guard duties, what it means to be a guard? It
feels very self-indulgent.
Yeah, it does. He killed someone and we're like, get over yourself, you little
little bitch.
However, though, Celaena now is the path to show him how to heal. So he's going to hold on to her a little tighter for that.
I like that in this moment, we get an echoing thought from Cale. So he initially thought about how Celaena could laugh after Endovier. About halfway through the book, when Celaena and Dorian were growing close and they were like walking in the garden and he viewed them from above. At the time, he was like, I trust her, even though I shouldn't trust her. And it's amazing she survived a year in Endovier and she can still laugh.
Yeah.
At the time, he viewed her with awe and recognized her strength, but now he's having that same thought and he's looking to her like a beacon. Now she's the example for how he can proceed with his life. And it's an interesting like change in development in perspective, I'll say. And a nice little callback to earlier in the novel.
Yeah, absolutely. Celaena thinks about the dreams now. So we're in Celaena's point of view, and she kind of has been reflecting on the dreams that she's had. And again, this is like probably a breadcrumb, but I pasted it here, so we're going to say it. Quote, to face a featureless young woman with golden hair and a crown too heavy for her to bear. To me, she's talking about herself.
Yep.
Aelin.
Yep.
We also are in this dream, like we're back in this dream, and we are seeing within Celaena's point of view, we are seeing Elena again, and she is back being represented by moonlight. Quote, it was just her and Elena, and the tomb was filled with moonlight, not a sign to be seen of the Ritterak's corpse. Consistency. We gotta love consistency.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned earlier in this book how Elena's grave wasn't well maintained. And, you know, that Brennan's was better.
Gavin.
Or Gavin. Oh yeah, that was Gavin, right? And how Gavin's was better. And then, you know, Elena's was whatever. And I talked about women in history being forgotten. Turns out that was the right fucking thing to call out, because SJM says that here. Quote, there are many things history has forgotten about me. Elena's blue eyes glowed with sorrow and anger. I fought on the battlefields during the demon wars against Erewhon at Gavin's side. That's how we fell in love. But your legends portray me as a damsel who waited in the tower with a magic necklace that would help the heroic prince. It's an important moment, right? That women are constantly forgotten in history and we undermine them. Even Celaena did that. She didn't think about, you know, she thought of Elena as just being another queen. So it makes me happy because I love when we're proven right. Like one of the things that we caught. And I forgot that she says this. I forgot that all this came back and I was like, haha, nailed it.
So then Elena tells Celaena this infamous line about Celaena's role in the overarching story and universe. Quote, you could rattle the stars, she whispered. You could do anything if you only dared. And deep down, you know it too. That's what scares you most. I wanted to focus on this quote because of it's a little breadcrumby, it's a little not, but I just thought it was interesting to focus on, and the word choice that SJM has used here, rattle. So like rattling a cage, right? When you shake the bars of a cage. In the context of this quote, the stars are like the bars of that cage, which could mean all sorts of things. It could mean that Celaena's power is greater than the expanse of stars around her because it's her cage, or Celaena's power can rattle the beings and worlds those stars represent because they are other realms.
Yeah, I love it. So
it's when you know more about SJM and her writing and the universe, it's a very powerful line.
Agreed. So maybe because we just interviewed Penn Cole and hey, I know, like that hasn't come out yet. And we talk about Spark of the Everflame and Glow of the Everflame, and Penn tells us about like the inciting incident and everything. It reminds me a little bit of this. Elena tells Celaena, quote, because there are people who need you to save them as much as you need to save yourself. This right here feels like the inciting incident, right? In many, many ways. In the sense of the larger arching arc of this whole series, right? Like there's very much like now this is the thing that launches her into her journey. And there's just something about like making sure that the end of the book 1 is that inciting incident to really get into it. I think as someone who, you know, is writing their own romantasy and is trying to like, you know, really see what resonates with people, I think it's that right there of the true inciting incident that matters to when you do like a book 1 leading into book 2. And this book feels like the setup to the main real book. Elena tells Celaena, quote, and when you're ready, when you start to hear them crying out as well, then you will know why I came to you and why I have stood by you and will continue to watch over you no matter how many times you shove me away. This is the reluctant hero, right? This is the hero's journey. This is something that you normally get book 1, right?
Right.
Like that's the beginning of book one that then goes into. It's just it blows my mind that here you are in what is book one with so much that's happened in Assassin's Blade that hasn't even been published yet. So, you have all this past that's happened, and then you have this whole ass book, and you're just now getting into the hero's journey and the reluctant hero.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
impressive.
which I'm really glad you brought that up, because after you made the comparison, I was like, oh my gosh, Throne of Glass is like Spark of the Everflame. It is the prequel before
Yeah.
the actual start of the hero's journey.
Yep. It's great. So write your first book like it's a prequel. I just realized there's one more chapter. As I scrolled farther down. We're happy to continue, but I was like, wait a minute, I was so ready for breadcrumbs. Okay, this makes sense, because I was like, where's the part where she talks to the king? Okay. Celaena thanks Elena, and then Elena tells Celaena,
Oh my
quote,
God.
"Thank you for saving my life." Elena bowed her head. "Blood ties can't be broken," she whispered and vanished, her words echoing in the silent tomb. And it's like, blood ties, we're related, you know?
Which Celaena knows.
I know,
But
but
we
now
don't.
us dumbasses over here.
Oh.
What? Okay, it's a little tiny chapter. 55. Shit, it's still me. That evil laugh. That evil laugh. I love it so much because I'll occasionally post a video and someone will be like, I can hear Amy's evil laugh in the background.
It is distinct.
It is distinct and it is evil. So the real like you might as well have your hands like maniacally like playing with each other like
I genuinely can't stop laughing though.
because the more you hear yourself, the more it sounds.
Yeah. Okay.
At least your sneezes are angelic to make up for you. Your laugh. Last week I was the one who couldn't stop laughing.
It's true.
If anyone could see how little these notes are. You good? You found inner peace?
Yeah.
Okay. So chapter 55, and Celaena goes to greet the king and to sign the contract because he finally agrees. And she dresses for the part, quote, "The gold skirts of her dress were the only sounds in the chamber. Celaena kept her hands pressed against the maroon bodice, trying not to wring them." I will forever question SJM's fashion choices and
Celena's.
Celaena. I'm like, so she supports USC, ASU? Like, is that what? Okay.
University of Minnesota.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, is that really their colors too?
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. So you and Emma, no matter what, are that's
red and
hilarious.
gold.
Is that not going to be your wedding colors?
Actually, I am wearing a red dress and she's going to wear a gold dress for the reception. I just put that together. That was not intentional.
I thought she was. Did she find her dress? I thought she was going to wear pink.
No, no, she plans on doing gold. She'll probably rent a dress rather than buy one.
Sure. Do you want me to take this out? The gold, her wearing gold.
I don't care.
You don't think her friends are going to come listen to this? And
no.
Okay. The thing is, like, if people didn't want us spilling their secrets, people listen to the podcast. They'll never know.
If you listen to the podcast, we'd be a lot more tight-lipped about things.
It's so true. The way we talk about
it's their fault.
It's their fault. If they cared more about us, then we'd care about them and just stop talking about them. So let's get through this last fucking chapter. So the thing is, though, maroon, which is basically red, represents the king, and then you have gold, light, starting to represent Elena. So you can see her as being Celaena is both the tool of the king and Elena. Not so subtly, the king threatens to kill her, the people she loves, and then the people that her people love. It's, and I don't think he whispers it to her. And no one says anything.
He does.
He does whisper it?
Yeah, it says so that only she could barely hear him.
Gotcha. Okay. I was like, where? I missed that one. And Celaena makes a note of the weather while this is all happening. Quote, outside the wind bellowed and raged against the glass spire, but it could do nothing to shatter the walls. And again, this is very much a good moment of, writers will look at something else other than their own feelings, because what's the king doing? The king is the wind. The king is trying to shatter her glass walls. But he can't because she's stronger than him. Take that.
Actually saw it as the opposite, right? So in moments where characters cannot express themselves, they might find their expression through something they're looking at. So in this moment, it could be Elena who's like pissed. It could be Celaena who's pissed. But then again, Wind embodying Elena, it could also be Elena being mad at the king and the threats towards Celaena. There's too much.
Aina.
Too much.
I know.
I'm ready for Aelin.
Bring me Aelin. I'm done with this Celaena Elena bullshit.
Before we end this chapter, there's this nice mirroring moment between Cale and Celaena. And Cale addresses Celaena as champion. Celaena addresses Cale as captain. On one hand, it highlights how far Celaena has come from being a prisoner at the start of the novel, at a time when she also addressed Cale as captain or Captain Westfall. It is also physically the opposite of the very first chapter of Throne of Glass, where once Cale escorted Celaena as a prisoner to Dorian, he is now escorting her away from Dorian and the king as champion.
Yeah.
So it's this nice little...
Yeah, it is a great bookend. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Look at that.
That was great. Good job, you. Good job, SJM.
Good job. I was like, SJM gets the credit.
Yeah, but
me.
you saw it. Yeah. Breadcrumbs and broomsticks.
We've been really bad at broomsticks this season. We need to try harder next season.
Broomsticks are interpretation. In chapter 49, Cain says to Elena, you were brought here. All of you were. All the players in the unfinished game. My friends, he gestured to the dead, have told me so, alluding to Erewhon and the ancestors that sealed him.
Just like the repeating of history.
Mm-mm.
In chapter 51, Nehemia tells Celaena, quote, and here, with magic banned, well, even though the word marks are a different kind of power, which just feels important to the Maas verse.
Yeah.
I know it's relevant here because magic's not supposed to be able to work, but word marks are a different kind of power than magic. That feels like something we need to know.
Yep. Also in chapter 51, Nehemia says to Celaena, quote, the man cares for you more than either of you realize, Nehemia said, a smile in her voice. Celaena's face burned, setting up for Crown of Midnight.
Because that man is Cale. I forgot to put that in there.
Fine. It's fine. It's
also
Cain.
Also in chapter 51, Nehemia remarks on the word mark on Celaena's forehead. Celaena tenses and asks if Nehemia knows what it means. Nehemia responds, quote, no, I do not. But I have seen it there before. It seems to be a part of you because it seals away her identity.
Yep. In chapter 52, as the king commands Parrington to stand down, quote, the fire in the mouth-shaped fireplace flickered, and green light filled the shadows of the room. Clues of the king's magic now. There's a lot of clues of his own magic happening.
In chapter 54, Celaena has nightmares. Quote, she often visited the tomb in her dreams to slay the Ritterak again, to be trapped inside Elena's sarcophagus, to face a featureless young woman with golden hair and a crown far too heavy for her to bear. Trapped inside a sarcophagus?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. I don't feel good.
Just a little bit of foreshadowing. It might have been unintentional. It might have been intentional. I don't know.
That felt intentional.
Doesn't it?
That felt intentional. That feels like one of those things that she had in her head of like, one day I'm going to destroy everyone.
Yeah. One day this is really going to fucking hurt everybody.
Okay, that one was... All right. Elena tells Celaena, quote, Elena took a step back. You could rattle the stars. She whispered, you can do anything if you dared, and deep down you know it too. And that's what scares you. And it reminds me of Celaena Aelin really, going through Prithian and flying through the stars. And then, Rhys helping her shoot across.
Pew, pew, pew,
pew, pew, pew. This is us. Being Fae, we would be great Fae.
If you're listening to us and not watching the YouTube, I think this YouTube video might be a treat.
Yeah, the best part is us. I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know what I was trying to do. I think I was gonna say like I've like learned to hide my face, so like I don't know what expressions I'm doing, and like now I'm not withholding.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you are, not as much. All right, back to the question of this season. The Throne of Glass series might be SJM's most epic series and debatably one of the most epic series in modern fantasy as a genre. So, Jacqueline, how does Throne of Glass, the novel, compare or fare as a first novel, and does it adequately set up for the rest of the series?
Do you know what I was thinking about throughout this book is how much people talk about Throne of Glass, and I've heard over and over, get through the first 3 books. It's kind of a unanimous thing of a lot of places I've seen online and discourse now, there might be listeners being like, I love the first 3 books, I love this one, and there's a lot of good, like there is truly a lot of good, but the series and what we know of as the epic, no, not you, Siri, shut up now. The whole series itself and what we know of it to be that epic fantasy really kicks off after book 3, right? It really takes things to another level, and it's hard to talk about Throne of Glass and not think about the first 3 books as a whole, because I think that the first 3 books are YA and the rest of the books are not YA, and just in how they're written, and eventually will be how they're marketed. They'll shift the marketing from YA to making this an adult series. So 2 things are happening. I think that it adequately sets up in the sense of lore, in the sense of intrigue, in the sense of like what's to come. On the other hand, you read this book, I would never in a million years expect it to become Kingdom of Ash. I think that SJM was writing a YA fantasy book, which was very popular, which was what was needed at the time, and she delivered that. It does not set up the heartbreak and the shattering adult real themes that happen later on, but at the same time, those are the things working against it. I think it still does a great job setting things up.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you that this is not the first novel that sets up Kingdom of Ash, right? Or at least it does not prepare the reader mentally for what Kingdom of Ash is. Whereas I would say like Earth and Blood from Crescent City,
yes,
is consistent with Flame and Shadow, right?
Yep.
And A Court of Thorns and
ACOTAR,
yeah, A Court of Thorns and Roses is consistent with A Court of Wings and Ruin.
Yep.
So that being said, it's obvious to me through reading this book that there was a lot of lore about this world and a lot of thinking SJM had done about this world when she wrote the first 3 books, especially when she wrote Throne of Glass. There is so much content in here that carries over. It does make me wonder if Throne of Glass was only meant to be the first 3 books.
I think so. I think about that a lot.
And then when she got to Heir of Fire, it totally flipped the script on her. That does not make this book bad. I think that there is a lot of intention in this book. I think that there is a lot that people struggle with that actually has purpose and is justified. But I also think that it's imperfect as a novel. I enjoyed it way, way, way more than I thought I was going to through the analysis.
Yes.
And it does make me excited to do the next 2 books, because I am one of those people who's like, if you're struggling with the first 3 books, just get to Queen of Shadows. That's all you need to do. As soon as you meet Manon, you're fine. It's all good. Manon and the 13. That's all you need.
Yeah.
I can see why people read this book and wanted to keep reading the series. Right? There are
Absolutely.
people who started from the beginning and who were like, yeah, I'm going to wait for the next book and I'm going to read it.
Yep.
If SJM were to publish this series now, she might do more revision than she did 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But at the end of the day, I do think it does a decent job setting up the rest of the series. It is confusing for me as doing the analysis because I'm like, I think I can tell what you intended, SJM, and I can tell you didn't follow that path.
Mm-hmm.
But in a lot of ways, it makes the analysis more interesting because
Yeah.
we can be like, I can't wait to see the moment where she realizes she's going a different direction.
And it's not SJM changing her mind, it's the characters telling
Mm-hmm.
her where the story goes. So
Yeah.
it's not a critique of like, and then SJM changed her mind and said, no, Kale can go shove it. Like, that's not how that works. Like, the
Right.
characters will truly show you where this is going. And I 100% believe that once we go, get Revan on book 3, it'll be, oh, so this is where things shifted. Oh, this
Yeah.
is where the ideas happen. Maybe in the next book, we'll start to see those little clues of her being like, well, I wasn't expecting Kale to be this harsh, or, I wasn't expecting that to happen. But it really does both for me. You know what I mean? Like, this book is both good setup, and I was surprised with how much this is some of our longest stuff yet. And there was a lot of
Yeah.
things to talk about. And, I think this book taught me you don't have to try to be Crescent City level of wordsmithing. You can keep things pretty simple and have a lot of impact there. And I think this has been a really good refresher for me as, my own writer, and for other listeners and writers too, of like, wow, we can get our head out of our asses a little bit. And, red
Just
means
right.
evil. Yeah, just
Right.
right. Red means evil. This gargoyle is bad. And that's okay. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be
More
particularly
complex.
deep. Yeah, it doesn't have to be complex, but like, there's purpose behind the writing and there's meaning behind it. As easy as it might be to grasp, there's still purpose, and that's still good. So that has done a lot, and it does feel very much like talking about a different, like a 3-book series right now.
Yep.
So that was Throne
it.
of Glass.
That was it.
Wow. How do you feel?
I still am dazed that I still feel like we have one more episode to do next weekend, but we don't. So
No.
I
You'll
feel
be in Korea next week.
Yes. So excited.
It's like vacation.
Yeah, but I am, with some of our longer seasons when they were 15, or that one time we did 21 episodes, it was such a relief to finish the book, but I'm excited to jump into Crown of Midnight.
Yeah, very much so. I'm very excited about it. I think that it's going to, there's so much I don't remember. This is where it really pops off of like, what? I'm looking at the book, and it seems like roughly the same. Air of Fire, it got thicker, but it's roughly the same size. So I can already tell you guys it's probably going to be another 10 episode. Yeah. And if you're wondering what the page count is, divide 10, get the page count, divide it by 10. And then that's
probably our episode breakdown right there.
Exactly. We'll figure out. So like we said, we'll do Crown of Midnight's, Air of Fire. We'll figure out the rest later. TBD. But yeah, I loved this. I feel like a new woman.
Yeah. Stick around for our spring 2025 book club.
Yep. I'm putting together the Canva announcement today sometime, and then I'll post that. And then we have tons of exciting interviews coming along.
So many. It's
so many
so good.
Great interviews. Yeah. And still some that I'm trying to get involved. So we'll see. Let's hit this outro. Thank you for listening to this season of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Next week, we'll be discussing listener thoughts on Throne of Glass.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
We look forward to sharing our thoughts next season when we explore the second novel. Well, I mean, technically, after Spring Book Club. No, we're doing it. Let me just read what you said because you have it on top of it. I'm going to shut up now. We look forward to our thoughts next season when we explore the second novel in Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass series. Our deep dive in Crown of Midnight is scheduled to release early June 2025. Until then, we're excited for you to join us for our Spring 2025 Book Club. New episodes air every Tuesday beginning April. Check out our Instagram for more information and the books we plan to cover.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Bye. I'm saving this for the recording so that the listeners may know that I struggled to wash my face today because of you. I couldn't lift my arms. I literally held my hand. I had my hands could only go up to here being like just above boob level, and I just like threw my face in my hands and like moved it around, and that's how I washed my hands.
You motorboated your own hands.
Yep, that's accurate. I just like couldn't. I couldn't. And then I was in my shower. I was like joking around with myself, and I'm like, I have had it up to here, and I can't go any higher than this. But I have had it up to much higher than where my hands can go.
That's so funny.
Oh my god, I am cracking left and right here.
Yeah, me too.
At one point when we were working out, one of the things that it was the first one when we were doing the side squats, and we both, and then like I heard you crack like you did the first one, and I could hear like crack, and I was like, haha, Amy. And then we go to the other side and I hear me crack, and I was like, oh damn. Oh no.
Yep. Sounds right. I would also my copying and pasting really got messed up. Let me just fix this really fast.